June 21, 1942. Outside Tobruk, Libya. 800 hours. The sun already burns mercilessly over the North African desert as German Field Marshal Erwin Rommel stands in the turret of his command vehicle, binoculars pressed to his dust-caked face. Behind him, the fortress city of Tobruk, Britain's supposedly impregnable stronghold, burns. Columns of black smoke twist into the pale morning sky. 25,000 Allied soldiers have just surrendered. It is one of the greatest German victories of the war. But Rommel isn't watching his triumph. He's watching the prisoners. British and South African troops emerge from the smoking ruins in long, ragged columns, their faces blackened with cordite and defeat. They've fought for 8 months to hold this position. Some can barely walk. The temperature will hit 110 degrees by noon. Around Rommel, his officers celebrate, slapping each other's backs, already composing their reports to Berlin. The youngest among them, Lieutenant Hans Schmidt, notices his commander's silence. Herr Feldmarschall, Schmidt ventures, should we begin processing the prisoners? Rommel lowers his binoculars. His blue-gray eyes, sharp beneath the peak of his dust-covered cap, sweep across the scene. He's 50 years old, compact and energetic, with the weathered face of a man who leads from the front. His uniform, like those of his men, is the tan tropical kit of the Afrika Korps, stained with the same dust that coats everything in this godless place. Water, Rommel says simply. Schmidt blinks. Sir? Get water to the prisoners, now. All of it, from our own supplies if necessary. Rommel's voice carries the flat certainty of a man who doesn't repeat orders. And medical attention for their wounded. Our doctors will treat them the same as our own. The young lieutenant hesitates. They've just captured the enemy's water supplies along with the fortress, but the Afrika Korps' own reserves are critically low. The next offensive toward Egypt depends on careful rationing. Around them, German soldiers are themselves rationed to 3/4 of a liter per day, barely enough to survive in this heat. Sir, our own men. I heard you the first time, Lieutenant. Rommel climbs down from the vehicle with surprising agility. These men fought well. They are soldiers, not animals. They will be treated as soldiers. He strides toward the nearest column of prisoners, his aide, Major Otto, scrambling to follow. The British troops watch him approach with the wary exhaustion of men who expect nothing good. They know who he is. Everyone in North Africa knows Rommel, the ghost, the desert fox, the panzer commander who appears where he's impossible to be, who strikes when you think you're safe, who's beaten larger forces with speed and audacity. A British major, his left arm in a makeshift sling, steps forward. His salute is mechanical, drained of everything but muscle memory. Rommel returns it crisply. Major? Douglas, sir. 2nd Battalion, King's Royal Rifle Corps. Your men fought with courage, Major Douglas. Rommel's English is accented but clear. Water and medical supplies are being brought forward. Your wounded will be treated. Douglas's eyes narrow slightly, searching for the trap, the cruelty behind the courtesy. In this war, surrender often means something terrible. The stories coming out of the Eastern Front, of the Pacific, speak of other things. But Rommel simply nods and moves on, already barking orders in German to the officers forming up around him. Within 20 minutes, water trucks are moving down the prisoner columns. German medics, the same ones who tended to wounded Afrika Korps soldiers through the night, begin setting up aid stations. An older German Sergeant, Franz Weber, approaches Major Otto with poorly concealed frustration. Weber's face is a road map of scars from the Great War, his eyes hard as the desert rocks. With respect, Herr Major, the men are asking why we're giving our water to the British. We need every drop for the push to Cairo. Otto glances toward Rommel, who's now speaking with a group of captured South African officers, pointing toward the shade of an abandoned building where wounded can be moved. The major chooses his words carefully. Because the Feldmarschall said so, Sergeant. And because that's how we fight this war. The SS wouldn't. We're not the SS. Otto's voice drops to iron. And pray we never become them. Rommel returns to his staff, already shifting mental gears from the captured to the campaign. His mind works like one of his panzers, always moving, always 3 steps ahead. Tobruk's fall has shocked the world. Churchill will face a vote of no confidence in Parliament. Hitler will promote Rommel to Field Marshal, the youngest in the Wehrmacht. The road to Egypt lies open, but even as his officers brief him on the captured supplies, the vehicle counts, the ammunition stocks, a part of Rommel's attention remains on the prisoners, on the wounded being carried to shade, on the distribution of water. This is not sentiment. Rommel doesn't do sentiment. This is code. The code of the professional soldier, the one that says you fight hard and you fight fair, that the enemy across from you is a warrior, not cattle. It's a code that's rapidly becoming extinct in this war of ideologies and extermination. And it's a code that will, in 2 years' time, cost him everything. Rommel's reputation doesn't come from kindness. It comes from winning. 3 months earlier, May 1942, Gazala. The British 8th Army had superior numbers, better supply lines, and prepared defensive positions stretching 40 miles into the desert. On paper, Rommel shouldn't attack. On paper, if he does attack, he should lose. He attacks anyway. The battle becomes a masterclass in armored warfare. Rommel doesn't just command from headquarters. He's in the thick of it, standing in his staff car nicknamed Greif, racing between panzer formations, appearing at crisis points before his own officers realize there's a crisis. He reads the battlefield like a book written in dust and fire, anticipating enemy moves, exploiting hesitation, turning British strength into vulnerability. When it's over, the British have lost 50,000 men, and the gateway to Tobruk lies open. But even in victory, Rommel's code holds. After the battle, Afrika Korps troops discover a British field hospital that's been cut off from retreat. 2 doctors, 6 nurses, and 43 wounded men wait in the desert for a fate they can only imagine. Horror stories circulate through armies like currency, the things soldiers do to the helpless, to women, to the defeated. Instead, Rommel assigns guards to protect them, not to watch them, to protect them. Captain Wilhelm Bach of the 15th Panzer Division gets the assignment. He's a school teacher from Munich in peacetime, drafted into a war he never wanted. Years later, after the war is over and the world has learned what horrors were possible, Bach will tell his students about the moment he understood not all German officers were the same. The Field Marshal himself came to the hospital. Bach will recall. He spoke to the British doctors, asked what they needed, gave orders that all medical supplies captured were to be shared with British wounded. Then he saluted the nurses, actually saluted them, and told them they were under the protection of the Afrika Korps. One of those nurses, Margaret Ellis from Surrey, keeps a diary throughout her captivity. Her entry from May 28, 1942. The German Field Marshal visited today. Nothing like what we expected. He was courteous, almost kind. Said we'd be exchanged through the Red Cross as soon as possible. I still can't quite believe it. Susan said he clicked his heels when he left, like something from the old wars, before all this madness. This is Rommel's paradox. He serves Hitler, but he fights like the Kaiser's officer he once was. He wears the swastika. But his war remains strangely clean in a conflict defined by atrocity. In Russia, German armies are implementing the final solution, burning villages, executing partisans and civilians without trial. In the Pacific, prisoners are tortured, enslaved, murdered. In North Africa, Rommel's war is different. He refuses to shoot captured commandos, even when Hitler directly orders it. The Commando Order of October 1942 decrees that all Allied special forces are to be executed immediately, even if captured in uniform. The order comes directly from the Führer. Violation means court-martial, possibly execution. Rommel files it away and ignores it. When his staff reminds him of the order, after British SAS raiders are captured behind German lines, Rommel's response is characteristically blunt. These men are soldiers. They will be treated as prisoners of war. If Berlin has a problem with that, they can come to the desert and handle it themselves. No one from Berlin comes to the desert. The Allies notice. British intelligence files on Rommel grow thick with reports, analyses, intercepted communications. They're trying to understand him, to find the weakness in the legend. What they find instead confuses them. In London, a young intelligence officer named Harold Carew compiles what becomes known as the Rommel Assessment. It's classified top secret, distributed only to Churchill's war cabinet. The conclusions are almost reluctant, as if Carew doesn't want to admit them. Subject demonstrates consistent adherence to Geneva Conventions. POW treatment exceeds international standard. No confirmed instances of war crimes under his command. Subject appears to operate under outdated code of military honor. Assessment: dangerous opponent, but honorable enemy. Recommend continued monitoring, but no assassination attempts. Rommel's replacement might prove less principled. It's an extraordinary document. In the middle of total war, British intelligence is recommending they don't kill one of Germany's best generals because his replacement might be worse. Churchill reads it and makes a note in the margin. Even in war, there are men who remind us what we're fighting for, and sometimes they wear the wrong uniform. But Rommel's code doesn't just earn him respect from the enemy, it earns him enemies at home. In Berlin, the Nazi elite watch his victories with mixed feelings. Yes, he's winning. That's useful for propaganda. But he's winning the wrong way. He doesn't arrest Jews in the territories he captures. He ignores orders from the SS. He treats Africans in the Free French forces as soldiers, not subhumans. He even refuses to allow the Afrika Korps to use slave labor from POW camps. Heinrich Himmler, Reichsführer of the SS, begins keeping his own file on Rommel. Not a military assessment, something else. A list of disobediences, of failures to implement racial policy, of dangerous independence. A list for later. Because in 1942, Rommel is too valuable to touch. He's the hero of the Reich, the unstoppable desert fox, the man who might actually reach Cairo and threaten the entire British Empire. But heroes, in the Third Reich, have a way of becoming inconvenient. October 23, 1942, El Alamein, Egypt, 2140 hours. The world explodes. 1,000 British guns open fire simultaneously. The barrage is so massive that soldiers 70 miles away feel the ground shake. The night sky over El Alamein turns orange, then white, then a pulsing red that makes the desert look like the surface of a dying star. In 30 minutes, the 8th Army will fire more shells than the entire British Expeditionary Force used in a month during World War I. Rommel isn't there. He's in Austria, on medical leave, recovering from desert sickness and exhaustion after 18 months of continuous combat. His replacement, General Georg Stumme, dies of a heart attack within hours of the barrage beginning, found slumped over his vehicle, killed by the sheer shock and stress of the assault. The phone call reaches Rommel at 1300 hours on October 24th. He's in a hospital bed in Semmering, reading reports he no longer has the authority to act upon. Hitler's personal physician has ordered complete rest. But the voice on the phone is Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, and the message is simple: get back to Africa, now. Rommel flies through the night, arrives at his headquarters on October 25th, and immediately understands he's been handed an impossible situation. The Afrika Korps is outnumbered 2-to-1 in men, 3-to-1 in tanks, 5-to-1 in aircraft. Worse, they're nearly out of fuel. The Italian Navy, responsible for supply convoys across the Mediterranean, is being systematically destroyed by British aircraft and submarines operating from Malta. Rommel has requested 30,000 tons of supplies per month to maintain operations. He's receiving 8,000. Half of that never reaches the front, sunk in transit. His tanks are running on fumes. His men are on quarter rations. And facing them is General Bernard Montgomery, with the largest, best-equipped force Britain has ever fielded in North Africa. Rommel reads the situation reports with the clinical detachment of a doctor reading a terminal diagnosis. Around him, his staff waits for the miracle they've come to expect. The sudden counterstrike, the brilliant maneuver, the impossible victory. Instead, Rommel does something he's never done. He asks Berlin for permission to retreat. The response comes from Hitler himself. It arrives on November 3, 1942, as the Afrika Korps is being systematically destroyed at El Alamein. The radio operator who receives it hesitates before bringing it to Major Otto, who hesitates before bringing it to Rommel. It's not long. Hitler's orders never need to be. To Field Marshal Rommel, you will hold your position without thought of retreat. Victory or death. Heil Hitler. Rommel reads it 3 times, then he sets it down on his map table with the careful precision of a man controlling rage. Victory or death, he says quietly, from a man sitting in a comfortable office in Prussia. His staff exchanges glances. This is dangerous talk. Walls have ears, and criticizing the Führer is treason. But Rommel continues, his voice still quiet but hardening. Does he understand what he's ordering? We have fuel for 3 days, ammunition for 2. He wants us to die for what? For sand? For his pride? Major Otto clears his throat carefully. Sir, the order is clear. We're to hold position. The order is suicide. Rommel stands, moves to the map, traces the British positions. Montgomery has us in a vice. If we stay, the Afrika Korps ceases to exist. Every man here dies or becomes a prisoner. Then what do we do? Rommel looks at the map for a long moment. Around him, British shells are falling with mechanical regularity, each barrage walking closer to headquarters. He can hear the distant chatter of machine guns, the deeper crump of tank rounds. His army is dying while he decides between 2 impossible choices: obey and watch them be destroyed, or disobey and save what he can. He chooses his men. Prepare for withdrawal, fighting retreat. We save what we can, evacuate the wounded first, destroy nothing that might help prisoners survive. Otto stares at him. Sir, the Führer's order. Read the Führer's order. Now you've heard mine. Rommel's eyes, bloodshot from dust and exhaustion, meet Otto's. If Berlin wants to court-martial me for saving German lives, they're welcome to try. The retreat from El Alamein becomes a masterpiece of defensive warfare. Rommel does what he does best. He improvises, maneuvers, fights. But now he's fighting for time, not territory. Every day he delays Montgomery is another day his men survive. Every position he defends and then abandons is a calculation. How many lives for how many miles? Even in retreat, the code holds. On November 7th, during the withdrawal through Fuka, German rearguard units discover
they've accidentally bypassed a British field hospital in the confusion of the retreat. Captain Heinrich Müller, commanding a company of the 90th Light Division, reports the situation to divisional headquarters. The response comes from Rommel personally. Leave them medical supplies, water, and transport if available. Mark their position clearly for advancing British forces. We're soldiers, not murderers. Müller, who's been fighting without adequate food or water for 6 days, who's watched friends die from wounds that proper supplies might have prevented, makes a decision that will haunt and honor him for the rest of his life. He follows orders. He leaves the British 2 trucks of water, a cache of medical supplies his own unit desperately needs, and a clearly marked German medical flag. Then he scrawls a note in broken English and leaves it with a wounded British captain who's semi-conscious with morphine. Hospital marked. Your forces will find you. Food and water provided. 90th Light Division, Afrika Korps. The British captain, David Warren, will keep that note for the rest of his life. In 1987, giving a lecture to Sandhurst cadets about the North Africa campaign, he'll show it to them, yellowed and fragile in a plastic sleeve. This, he'll tell those young officers, is the difference between a soldier and a savage. The man who left this was retreating, starving, probably dying. His own commander had been abandoned by Berlin, but he still did the right thing. Remember that, especially when doing the right thing is hard. But in November 1942, Rommel doesn't know he's creating legends. He only knows he's losing. The retreat continues across Libya, back through the ground he conquered. The victory is now turning to ashes. Tobruk falls again, this time to the British. Benghazi, Gazala, each name a memory of triumph, now a marker of defeat. And through it all, Berlin sends orders and demands instead of supplies. Hitler wants him to hold every position. Goering promises air support that never comes. The Italian High Command squabbles over protocol while their army disintegrates. Rommel stops reading most of the messages from Berlin. He's fighting a different war now. Not for victory, that's impossible. For survival, for his men. On the long retreat, during a brief stop at a captured British supply dump being evacuated, Sergeant Weber approaches Rommel's vehicle. The old sergeant's face is grayer than the desert dust, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. "Herr Feldmarschall," the men are asking, "are we going to make it?" Rommel looks at him for a long moment. Around them, the Afrika Korps, what's left of it, is falling back in good order, still disciplined, still fighting, still trusting him. "Yes," Rommel says. It might be a lie, but it's the lie his men need. "Yes, we're going to make it." May 12, 1943, Tunis, Tunisia. Final Afrika Korps headquarters. The war in North Africa ends not with a bang, but with mathematics. 250,000 Axis troops, German and Italian, surrender in Tunisia. It's the largest German capitulation of the war so far, larger even than Stalingrad 3 months earlier. But Rommel doesn't see it happen. He's already gone. Hitler recalled him in March, ostensibly for health reasons, actually to avoid the propaganda disaster of the Desert Fox being captured or killed in the final collapse. Rommel's last act before leaving Africa was to shake hands with every officer on his staff, looking each man in the eye. "I'm sorry," he told them. "Not sorry for the defeat. Wars are lost sometimes. Sorry for leaving them to face the end alone. Major Otto, who will spend the next 2 years in a British POW camp in Mississippi of all places, will remember that handshake." He looked, Otto will later write, like a man who knew the war was already lost, not just in Africa, all of it. Now Rommel stands in the Wolfschanze, the Wolf's Lair, Hitler's headquarters in East Prussia, and understands just how right his instinct.
Rommel says nothing. They both know he requested those resources for 18 months. The fuel, the ammunition, the reinforcements, all denied or diverted to the Russian front, to the endless meat grinder in the east. "I have a new mission for you," Hitler continues. "The Americans and British will invade Western Europe, probably France. You will ensure they fail." And just like that, Rommel goes from commanding a single corps in the desert to responsibility for defending the entire Atlantic Wall, Hitler's ambitious name for the coastal fortifications stretching from Norway to Spain. He arrives in France in November 1943 as commander of Army Group B, tasked with inspecting and strengthening the defenses. What he finds appalls him. The Atlantic Wall exists mostly in propaganda newsreels. In reality, it's a patchwork of scattered bunkers, beach obstacles, and minefields with enormous gaps. Entire stretches of coastline are undefended. The vaunted concrete fortifications exist only at major ports. Most positions are undermanned, under-equipped, and commanded by officers who've been in France so long, they think the war is something that happens to other people. Rommel descends on them like a force of nature. Within weeks, the entire coastal defense system is transformed. Rommel is everywhere, inspecting bunkers at dawn, examining beach gradients at low tide, interrogating engineers about fields of fire and obstacle placement. He orders millions of mines laid, 500,000 beach obstacles installed, thousands of low-lying areas flooded to prevent glider landings. His staff, comfortable officers who've spent years enjoying French wine and soft postings, suddenly find themselves working 20-hour days. The enemy will come with overwhelming force, Rommel tells his division commanders at a conference in Paris. Our only chance is to destroy them on the beaches, in the first 24 hours. If they establish a beachhead, we lose. We must hold them at the water's edge. General Gerd von Rundstedt, the aristocratic commander-in-chief west and Rommel's nominal superior, disagrees. Von Rundstedt wants to hold the panzer reserves inland, then counterattack once the invasion site is confirmed. It's the classic defensive doctrine: let them land, identify the main thrust, then destroy it with concentrated armor. That might work, Rommel counters,
If we had air superiority, we don't. The moment our panzers move in daylight, Allied aircraft will destroy them. We must have armor at the coast, ready to counterattack within hours, not days. The argument goes up the chain to Hitler, who makes the worst possible decision. He compromises. Some panzers go to Rommel, some stay with von Rundstedt. Some are held in reserve under Hitler's personal control, not to be committed without his direct order. It's a recipe for disaster, and Rommel knows it. But he's no longer the independent desert commander, making decisions in real time, thousands of miles from Berlin. Now he's part of a calcified command structure where every decision requires approval, where ideology trumps tactics, where Hitler's intuition overrides professional military judgment. The change grates on him. In February 1944, Rommel returns home to Herrlingen for a brief leave. His wife, Lucy, notices the change immediately. He's lost weight. The tan from Africa has faded to gray. He looks older than his 52 years. "They're going to lose this war," he tells her quietly, standing in the garden of the home he's barely seen in 3 years. "The Allies have too much. Too many men, too much material, too much production. And Berlin won't listen." It's the kind of statement that, overheard by the wrong person, means arrest, means interrogation by the Gestapo, means a concentration camp or a noose. Lucy takes his hand. "Then why keep fighting?" "Because those are German boys on those beaches, 18, 19 years old. They deserve a commander who'll give them a chance."
On June 4, 1944, Rommel inspects beach defenses near Calais. The weather is terrible. Rough seas, low clouds, driving rain. Perfect invasion weather is forecast to last another 2 weeks. Intelligence suggests the Allies won't come until mid-June at the earliest, and even then probably at Calais, the closest point to England. Rommel makes a decision. His wife's birthday is June 6th. He hasn't seen her since February. He decides to drive home to Germany, present her with a gift, a pair of expensive shoes he's been saving, then continue to meet with Hitler and personally request release of the Panzer Reserves to his command. He leaves France on June 5, 1944. That night, 156,000 Allied troops board ships and aircraft across southern England. The weather forecast has shown a brief break in the storm. General Dwight Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, makes the call. Go. The invasion is on, and the Desert Fox, for the first time in his military career, is in exactly the wrong place at exactly the wrong time. Section 5. The Longest Day. June 6, 1944, Herrlingen, Germany, 06:30 hours. The telephone shatters the morning quiet. Rommel is already awake, old soldier's habit, drinking coffee in his study when his aide, Captain Helmuth Lang, answers. Lang's face goes white. He cups the receiver. "Sir, it's General Speidel from headquarters. The invasion has begun, Normandy, 2 hours ago." For 3 seconds, Rommel doesn't move. Then he's in motion, the coffee forgotten, already calculating distances, drive times, deployment schedules. Normandy, not Calais. His instinct about the Allies choosing the unexpected was right. His decision to leave France was catastrophically wrong. Order all reserves to move to the beachhead immediately. All of them. I don't care whose authority they're under. Move them now. "Sir, the Panzer Reserves under the Führer's control require his personal." "I know what they require. Get me on the phone with OKW." The Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, High Command. The bureaucratic nightmare that stands between field commanders and the armor they need. "And prepare the car. We leave in 10 minutes. Lucy appears in the doorway, still in her dressing gown. Rommel moves to her, kisses her forehead quickly. "I have to go." She nods. She's been a soldier's wife for 28 years. She knows what that phrase means. "Your birthday gift. Save it for next time." He's already turning, reaching for his cap, his mind 300 miles away on a beach he's inspected a dozen times, where German boys are dying while he stands uselessly in his own living room. The drive back to France is a nightmare of frustration. Rommel's Mercedes races west at maximum speed, but Allied fighter bombers own the skies. Twice they're forced off the road, diving for cover while P-47 Thunderbolts strafe anything that moves. The Luftwaffe, Göring's vaunted air force, is nowhere to be seen. Through the car radio, reports filter in, each one worse than the last. American troops landing at Utah and Omaha beaches, British and Canadians at Gold, Juno and Sword, airborne divisions dropping inland. The Atlantic Wall, Rommel's months of work, is being overwhelmed by sheer weight of numbers and firepower. And the Panzers, the critical armored reserves that could throw the invasion back into the sea, sit motionless, waiting for Hitler's permission to move. Hitler, who didn't go to bed until 0400 hours, and has left orders not to be disturbed. At 1000 hours, the Führer finally wakes. By then, the Allies have landed 156,000 troops. The beachheads are secure. The golden window for counterattack, the hours when the invaders are most vulnerable, disorganized, still establishing positions, has closed. When permission finally comes to commit the Panzers, Allied aircraft are waiting. The 12th SS Panzer Division, trying to move from its position south of Caen to the invasion beaches, loses half its armor to air attack before it ever reaches the front.
Tanks that survived years of combat in Russia burn in French wheat fields, destroyed by rockets from planes the Germans can't shoot down because there's nothing left to shoot them with. Rommel reaches his headquarters at La Roche-Guyon at 2200 hours on June 6th. 18 hours after the invasion began. 18 hours too late. General Hans Speidel, his chief of staff, briefs him on the situation. Speidel is a careful, intellectual officer, more thinker than fighter, but even he can't disguise the disaster. 5 separate landing zones, all successful. Estimated 150,000 troops ashore, with more arriving hourly. We've contained some sectors but haven't eliminated any beachheads. Our counterattacks have been ineffective. Rommel studies the map in silence. Red markers show Allied positions, spreading inland like blood in water. German units are scattered, trying to respond to 5 simultaneous crises. The Panzers, still moving into position. Allied air superiority is making movement almost impossible during daylight. We're having to move everything at night. By the time we concentrate our armor, they'll have 500,000 men ashore. Rommel's voice is flat, emotionless. The voice of a man doing calculations that all lead to the same answer. We've lost. The room goes quiet. Several junior officers exchange nervous glances. That kind of defeatist talk is dangerous. But Rommel continues, his finger tracing the map. They'll break out from the beachhead within a month, probably here at Caen. We'll fight, slow them down, but we can't stop them. Not without air cover. Not without reserves. Not without... He trails off. Not without a miracle. And Rommel stopped believing in miracles around the time his fuel ran out at El Alamein. The battle for Normandy becomes a brutal, grinding defensive campaign. Rommel does what he does best. He improvises, maneuvers, makes the Allies pay for every field and hedgerow. But he's fighting with one hand tied behind his back. Hitler refuses to allow any retreat, any tactical withdrawals. Every position must be held to the last man. The same order that trapped the Afrika Korps at El Alamein now bleeds the German army white in France. And there's something else. Something new in this campaign that wasn't in Africa. The SS. In North Africa, Rommel commanded mostly regular Wehrmacht troops, professional soldiers who followed professional codes. In Normandy, SS divisions are mixed into his command. Men who've come from the Eastern Front, where the war was fought without rules, without mercy, without humanity. On June 10th, soldiers of the 2nd SS Panzer Division murder 642 French civilians in the village of Oradour-sur-Glane. Men, women, children, burned alive in a church. When Rommel hears the report, he demands a full investigation and courts-martial. The response from Berlin is silence. On June 17th, the SS executes Canadian prisoners near the Abbaye d'Ardennes. Men who surrendered, who were disarmed, shot in the back of the head and dumped in a garden. Rommel files formal protests, demands the officers responsible be arrested. Again, Berlin is silent. He realizes with cold clarity that he's no longer fighting the same war he fought in Africa. This isn't soldier against soldier. This is something darker. The mask has come off, and underneath is something monstrous. On July 15, 1944, Rommel composes a letter. Not to Hitler. He's long since stopped believing Hitler will listen. To Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel at OKW. It's a professional military assessment, couched in careful language, but the message is clear. The troops are fighting with exemplary courage, but the unequal struggle is nearing its end. I must request that you draw the appropriate political conclusions from this situation. It's the most carefully worded way possible to say, we're losing. Make peace. End this war. The letter never reaches Hitler, but someone reads it. Someone makes a note.
Someone adds it to a file that's been growing in Berlin, a file full of Rommel's disobediences, his failures to implement proper National Socialist policy, his dangerous independence, the file with Himmler's seal on it. 2 days later, July 17th, Rommel is returning from a frontline inspection near Liverpool. His driver, Daniel, navigates the staff car along a tree-lined road. It's 1800 hours, late enough that Allied air activity should be winding down for the day. Behind them, Captain Lang spots them first. 2 RAF Spitfires dropping out of the evening sun. Aircraft, left side. Daniel floors the accelerator, but it's too late. The Spitfires open fire, 20mm cannon shells walking across the road. One strikes the car's left rear wheel. The Mercedes swerves violently, careens off the road, and slams into a tree. Rommel, standing in the open car to get a better view of the road ahead, always the frontline commander, is thrown from the vehicle. His head strikes the tree trunk with a sound Lang will hear in nightmares for the rest of his life. The desert fox lies motionless on a French roadside, blood pouring from a fractured skull. His legend shattered like the car's windscreen. The Spitfire pilots, banking away from their strafing run, have no idea who they just hit. It's just another German staff car, just another target. They don't know they've changed the course of history. July 17, 1944. French countryside, 20 minutes after the attack. Rommel doesn't die. Not yet. Captain Lang and another officer pull him from the wreckage, blood soaking through their uniforms as they carry their unconscious commander to the side of the road. Rommel's skull is fractured in 3 places. His left eye socket is shattered, his cheekbone crushed. For 10 minutes, Lang can't find a pulse and thinks he's holding a corpse. Then Rommel gasps. A wet, bubbling sound that's more reflex than breath, but it's life. They commandeer a passing vehicle and race him to a field hospital in Bernay. The doctor on duty, Major Ludwig, takes one look at the head wounds and prepares himself to write a death certificate for a field marshal. Instead, he operates for 3 hours, removing bone fragments from brain tissue, relieving the pressure on Rommel's skull. It's delicate work made nearly impossible by the limited supplies, the cramped conditions, the sound of Allied artillery growing steadily closer. Rommel survives the surgery. Barely. He's transferred to a military hospital in Bernay, then to another in Le Vésinet near Paris. For 2 weeks he drifts in and out of consciousness, mumbling about panzers and beaches and orders that make no sense. Lucy receives a telegram on July 19th. Your husband seriously wounded, condition critical, will advise. She takes the next train to France, traveling through a Germany that's coming apart at the seams. Allied bombers fly overhead almost unchallenged. Cities burn. Refugees clog the roads. The 1,000-year Reich is in its death throes, and everyone knows it except the men in Berlin who still give orders, as if victory is possible. But while Rommel lies unconscious, fighting for his life, something else happens. Something that will seal his fate. July 20th, 1944. Wolfschanze, East Prussia. 12:42 hours. A bomb explodes in Hitler's conference room. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg, a decorated war hero who lost an eye, his right hand, and 2 fingers from his left hand fighting in North Africa, has placed a briefcase bomb under the conference table. The explosion tears through the room, kills 4 men, wounds many others. But Hitler survives. A heavy oak table leg shielded him from the worst of the blast.
He emerges from the wreckage with a perforated eardrum, singed hair, and shredded trousers, but alive. Alive and furious. The purge begins immediately. Stauffenberg is shot that night in Berlin, along with several co-conspirators. But he's just the beginning. Hitler, already paranoid, now sees traitors everywhere.